What's up guys, welcome back to another episode in my React Native tutorial series. I'm Gabriel with Joga Software, and today I'm going to be talking about React navigation within an Expo-based React Native project. This video will be a continuation of my first video on getting things set up, so if you are completely new to React Native and want to know how to get things set up, I suggest you go watch that first video. For everyone else, let's get started. So what exactly is React navigation anyways? React Navigation is a library used in React Native projects in order to make setting up screens and navigating between them easy for developers. Although this will not be an in-depth look at React Navigation as a whole, I feel that most programming knowledge comes from hands-on trial and error, and this tutorial will be enough to get you up and running so that you will be capable of learning the more advanced stuff on your own. First, we will go over cloning our project from GitHub and getting it running. Then we will talk about the types of navigators and how our app is structured using them. Lastly, we will go over how to navigate between screens using the navigators we covered. I want to make sure that we're all working with the same test project, so if you don't already have your project set up from my previous video, I'm going to show you how to clone it from GitHub using Git and how to install the node modules using the terminal window. This in itself is a valuable skill to have, and more on Git and GitHub will be talked about in later episodes in the series. The first thing you're going to want to do is open up a terminal window. Once you have your window opened, go ahead and find a location on your computer that you want to place your project in. Once you have found where you want your project to go, type cd into the terminal window and drag and drop the folder you chose into the window and press enter. This will change our terminal directory to the folder you chose. Now we are going to clone the GitHub repository containing the test project into this folder. Open up the GitHub link in the description of the video and you'll be taken to my GitHub page. Click on clone or download and click the clipboard button to copy the link to your clipboard. You can now close the GitHub page and go back to your terminal. Once in the terminal, type in git clone with a space after it and then paste in the link we copied earlier and press enter. If all goes well, we should now have the repo cloned locally. You can check this by typing ls into your terminal window and pressing enter. You should see an entry with the name rn tutorial-base-navigation. Next, we are going to want to navigate into this folder. Type in the command cd with the space after it and then the name of the folder, rn tutorial-base-navigation, and press enter. This places us at the root of the test project folder. The last thing we need to do is type in the command npm install and press enter. The dependencies required for the project to run will download and we'll be ready to run the project. When it is finished downloading, open up Visual Studio Code and open our project folder within the program. Next, create a terminal window by selecting Terminal and New Terminal. In this terminal window, I'm going to type in the command expo start and press enter. A quick side note, if you saw my previous video, you will notice that we used expo start this time to run the app, but used npm run start last time. This can be explained simply by looking in our package.json file and looking in the section called scripts. You will see an entry called start that has a value of expo start. This means that when we type in npm run start, we are actually just running the expo start command. Once our app is up and running and you open it up in the Expo app on your phone, you're going to notice that it has some navigation built into it already, and this is the reason that I chose the tabs template when we created our app in the last video. Our default tabs project actually contains 3 types of navigators in it already, but you wouldn't know that just by looking at it. The most obvious navigator is the tab navigator, and that is the one that allows us to click between pages by selecting one of the tabs at the bottom of the screen, hence the name tab navigator. If you open up the file appnavigator.js under the navigation folder, you can see that we have a pretty small file. The default export is for an app container that is being initialized with a switch navigator, which we will not be talking about in this video, but it has a single route called main that references our main tab navigator, which we will be talking about in this video. If we jump over to the app.js file and take a look at the render method, we see that once the app has finished loading, it displays the app navigator, which in turn displays our main tab navigator as we saw in the last file. Now let's jump over to the file maintabnavigator.js, since now we know that this is what is being rendered when our app finishes loading. Immediately you will notice that there's kind of a lot going on in this file, but once we break it down, it's really not that complicated. First, scroll down to the end of the page where we see the default export. We see that what is being exported is actually just a tab navigator with 3 tabs provided as parameters: the home stack, links stack, and settings stack. And this is really how simple a tab navigator is. You create the navigator and provide the tabs that the user will be able to navigate between, and it just works. The real detail now comes in the tabs themselves. Let's take a look at the home stack as an example. If we scroll to the top, we see that a variable is declared called home stack that is of the type stack navigator. It has one screen called home that references the class home screen. The only other thing left to explain on the page would be the blocks of code that set the navigation options fields of each of the tabs. These are simply options that allow you to configure the navigator. In our case, the label and tab bar icons are set for us. The rest of the page just consists of the other 2 stack navigators, and they work identically to the home stack we're looking at here. So why is it that the home screen is wrapped up in a stack navigator and not just passed directly into the tab navigator? This is actually where the power of React navigation shines. We are able to nest navigators within each other to achieve different results. Let's take a quick look at what our navigation hierarchy is looking like at this point, because it's kind of getting a little complicated. From this diagram, you will see that we start out with our app container that contains our switch navigator. The switch navigator itself contains our main tab navigator, and our tab navigator has 3 tabs called the home stack, the link stack, and the settings stack. Each of these tabs themselves are stack navigators containing one screen with a matching name. It may seem very complicated for the simple app layout we currently have set up, and the same result could have been achieved with a simpler structure, but it actually lays the foundation for a more well-structured navigation setup. Adding the switch navigator in at the root will allow for our authentication flow to be added easily, and the stack navigator at the root of each tab will allow separate screen transitions that maintain their state to be added to each tab individually. So what is a stack navigator? A stack navigator is really just what the name implies. If you are familiar with the stack data structure, you know that it works like a literal stack. You have an initial screen and you are able to stack screens on top of it and navigate back between them by popping them off the top and pushing new ones back on. Rather than the pages being laid out in tabs like the tab navigator, we now have a sort of flipbook of screens we can navigate between. An example used for this would be if our settings screen had an option that could be clicked on that would navigate us to a detail screen that gave us the option to navigate back from. Now that we have a good idea of how navigation works in our app, we can talk about how to actually navigate between screens. By default, the tab navigator allows us to navigate between screens simply by clicking on a tab. But what if we wanted to navigate to a new screen when the user pressed a button? Let's open up the screens folder and add in a new file. We will call it testscreen.js, and I'm going to copy over the code from the home screen page and remove everything but the root view from the render method, along with changing the name of the class to testscreen. Now I'm going to head over to my main tab Navigator and add our new screen into the home stack. After saving your files, your app will reload, but nothing has changed. We need to add a button to the home screen that allows us to navigate to our newly created screen. Open up the home screen again and remove everything but the root view, just like we did with the last test screen. After you have done that, add the button Import to the React Native imports. Then create a new button within the root view with the title toTest screen, and create a method to pass into the onPress field. Inside of this method, we are able to access the Navigator by using this.props.navigation and calling the push method on the Navigator. The first parameter passed into this method is the name of the screen we want to navigate to. Looking back at the main tab Navigator, we can see that we called our screen test, so that is what we will put for our path. Before we save and test our code, let's add a couple styles to make sure that our button shows up in the center of the screen. Add justify content and align items to the container style with the value of center. Now we can save and test out what we just did. If you click on the toTest screen button, you notice that we are taken to the test screen that we created, and we can get back simply by tapping the Home tab button. But I'd like this to be a bit more like other apps with a back button in the top tab Navigator. So scroll to the top of the home screen page and replace the line that says header null with header title and a value of home screen. Do the same for the test screen, but give it a different name. If you save and run the app again, you can see now that we have a header bar with back buttons for each screen. The last thing we're going to look at in this video will be one more type of navigation that will allow us to navigate between navigators. Create another button just like before, but this time instead of pushing our test screen onto the stack, we are going to use the method navigate and supply the name settings as the parameter. If we save and run the project again, clicking on the new button will now take us to the Settings tab on the tab bar, showing us that not only can we navigate within the current navigator, but also between navigators. That concludes what I have prepared for this video. We have covered the basics of React navigation, so go ahead and play around with the app to get a better feel of how everything is working together, and I will see you again in my next video. If you found this information useful and actually made it to the end of this video, go ahead and leave a like, comment, and subscribe. It will definitely help me out and enable me to continue making these videos, as well as other programming related content I have planned for the future. Thanks again.